y'all. Good morning. Happy Monday. So, I thought I would hop on right quick. I know I said I wasn't going to do many videos driving just because the reception is not as good when I'm moving. I guess that it has to keep calibrating. And, but this morning I wanted to make sure I connected with you guys because last week I was so worn out that by the time I got to Friday, I did not do anything. I had a friend who was taking her son to college on Friday, and I went by there to help her pack the van. And she got him delivered, and it was a beautiful moment to watch with their family. Her son and her father are so close that, like, when we did the closing prayer to cover them, it was just so emotional for both of them. And it's just a beautiful thing to see that because so many children don't get to grow up with their parents and their grandparents these days. So I'm excited to see what this young man is going to do. He's always been very studious and, kept with his studies. And then I'm going to see what my girlfriend is going to do with herself because her life has been revolved around him for the past 18 years. So it's going to be very interesting to see how God allows them both to grow. But anyway, I wanted to hop on this morning and kind of just give you guys an update of my week, as well as kind of talk about, I really want to talk about like getting to know someone before we make an assumption about them. And working in the education field, especially in the schools that I work in, typically there is a mindset. Every school that I've ever worked at, people have always said, and when I say work, every school that I've ever taught at, if you talk to someone about it, they like, ooh, what's it like to work there? Because the students are a little bit different. It's a very urban area. No matter how wonderful that everybody says that Atlanta is, the majority of their schools are in an area where children are on free and reduced lunch. And they are in a place where a lot of times you got multiple children within the household. And I'm saying that because, even kind of just the ear hustle that goes on. I go into a classroom, I take those scholars for who they are when they walk into my classroom. So it's good to know information about them prior to them coming. But for the most part, I am going to examine those scholars for myself, because whereas one teacher may have had a great problem with them, and I see that even with myself, there are some students who they just do not gel with me. They don't like my personality trait. They are not accustomed to someone that says what they mean and means what they say, and don't have to yell at them in order to get that done. And then there are other students who they really love my class, and they just gravitate to me because they want that love and care that comes along with it. And so I'm saying that because there were a few students when they walked in, first impression would think that they're probably going to give you a problem. They might have been bigger in stature. Now remember, I went down to middle school, so the students should be smaller. But some of the guys that I have, and I have just about all boys, I have 21 students, and out of the 21 students, I want to say 5 might be girls. So the majority of my class is boys, which I like. I can do boys better than I can girls anyway, because the girls, they just pop off at the mouth a lot. And I'm not accustomed to that. And then, I have another class that's I have a small group classes that I teach. So those classes are my own classroom. And then I have co-talk class, and I think it's 6 students in that classroom. So totally, I have somewhere, I'll probably have up to about 30 students this year. But the bottom line is, if you judge the scholars by their look, I took the time this week to kind of ask questions, and the scholars don't know when I'm asking those questions why I'm asking it. But like if I'm seeing some behaviors or some hardness or something like that, I might ask the scholar, how many siblings do you have? And One student said, he said, it's 7 of us. I said, oh, okay. Everybody at home? Yeah. So now in my mind, I'm thinking, there's not a lot of houses in my community that house 7 children. So I already know, just based on the calculation, that they may be living in like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, right? They may be living in a 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath. But for the most part, most students are living in sorry guys, I'm coming up on the school zone. I don't know. It's crazy traffic. So my mentoring teacher, her birthday was this weekend, and I wanted to stop and get her some flowers, and I'm an hour or so early, but I don't want to spend my early time sitting in traffic. So I gotta possibly make a decision. Oh, the red light is out up here, and it's making everybody stop. They need to send somebody out here and actually, they need to send someone out here and regulate that red light. So, sorry about that, guys. But basically, you would think that about the student. Well, he kind of had this kind of colder outer core almost, as though he might be a little bit distant. And so when I ended up talking to him, basically he explained to me that he is, I think, like the second to the oldest, and he's he's the second to the oldest, and with that second to the oldest, he is also sometimes, he shared with me, and he just said it kind of matter of fact. He was like, yeah, when there's that many people in the house, sometimes, I might just go take a shower, and we might have two boxes of pizza, and when I come back, I don't have any because they've already eaten it all. Well, what that let me know is that for that scholar, I may have to do some extra things. Like I might give him an extra Capri Sun, or I might set aside an extra bag of chips for him. There are going to be some things that I will do in my classroom to help to relieve the stress that he is having, also of being one of the older siblings. If he didn't, because I talked to several students, so I might be mixing him up. So he's either the oldest or the next to the oldest. I want to say, now that I'm thinking about it, he might be the oldest. And with him being the oldest, that means that he oftentimes may have to go without while everybody else is getting, as well as he was a little bit more outspoken. And some people may see it like he's being disrespectful, when really he's not. If you think about it, if he's the oldest of 5 or 6 siblings, and he is, managing that with them, he probably is having to, make a lot of adult decisions, and oftentimes having to be in the position of being an adult. So when we put children in those type positions, we can't get upset when they then begin to kind of make decisions like they are adults. And so those are types of things that I feel are really important when it comes down to getting to know students as far as being a teacher, and then how you can meet the needs of being able to teach those scholars. So by me doing that and getting an understanding of that, what that tells me is that I want to create an atmosphere where that child can be a child as much as possible in my classroom. I want him to be able to be a kid. Like when he's at school, if I can create an environment where he does not have to be a man at 8th grade, and so sometimes we don't understand the culture or the atmosphere that a child comes from, and we automatically think that they're being grown, or they are being outspoken. But as an educator, that's a part of what we do with dealing with social emotional component. So I'm saying that because those same qualities and traits and things that we might that I may bring into the classroom, I look at those same qualities and traits in my dating and vetting process. You know, sometimes people have gone through things that they're not going to open up and share with you when they first meet you, or they're not comfortable enough with you in order to open up and actually share those things. And so we can't make assumptions just because someone comes from a certain environment or because someone doesn't come from a certain environment. You know, there are a lot of things that my students teach me because I'm just green when it comes to the streets. You know, I might have some knowledge base, I got some background knowledge, but these kids are living this every day. You know, so there are components that they've been exposed to that I haven't even been exposed to as a 56-year-old woman. And with that, I then can lean in and glean something from them. I can learn something from what the scholars are bringing to the table. And I just want to say that to say, don't judge a book by its cover. Each one of us has the capacity to grow and to develop and to become someone different. And if we create an environment, because that's all teaching is. Teaching and educating children is nothing but creating an environment for them to grow. You are establishing a space that they can then develop. And what you do in your relationships is the same thing. You either establish a space that you and your partner can grow, you know, and when you do that, it it creates an atmosphere for people to build long-term relationships. And what kind of made me start thinking about this, one of my classmates, he posted his parents and they celebrated, was it 62 or 67 years? Probably was 67, because if we're 56, it's probably 67 years of marriage. And in my mind, I thought, you know, wow, that's such a beautiful example. Like, I love seeing you know, families where they have a family member that can celebrate that type of victory. And for me, you know I won't get 60 years anymore because that season has passed for us. But I do believe that I might. Sorry, y'all, I'm trying to put on my jacket because I'm going to run in this store and I don't want to go in here without my jacket on. But I do believe that I might could get a good 20 to 30 years out of a marriage. And I'm not going to judge, sorry, I'm not going to judge the book by its cover, because what might be good for one person may not be good for someone else. But in the end, I think that it's important that we really not judge people based upon their outer core. Take a moment and find out what it is that causes them to operate the way that they do, and take a moment and then be empathetic about maybe what they've gone through, but then also hold them accountable. You know, one of the things that I shared with my scholars is I'm going to always empathize with you. I'm going to always give consideration to what it is that you may be going through. You know, I had one student, he came in last week and he's already very hyper. Like, I'm going to definitely have to figure out a way to get him a way to get some of that hyperactivity out. But he came in, he was late, and he said, you know, I'm late. You know, my bus didn't come. My auntie had to bring me this, that, and the other. And so I was like, okay, well, just have a seat. And he was hyper. And I said, hey, I'm going to for you to settle down. And he said, hey, I'm having a rough morning. And this is the way the kids talk to me. He said, I'm having a rough morning. And then he said, you know, my granddad is in the hospital. And so, you know, immediately, though he was working my last nerve, I know just based in conversation how close that he is with his grandfather. So that told me that he probably was dealing with a little anxiety that morning. He may have been a little anxious and frustrated and just emotions everywhere. And so I said, you know what? I'm sorry to hear that. And, you know, I told him that because of that, I'm going to give you a little grace. And so I understand, but I'm not going to give you a pass to misbehave or to be out of order. So if you feel like you need a moment, let me know, and then we'll work that out. And what I want you to take away from this short video is that don't always look at a person's circumstance. Give them a moment and they might open up to you to let you know what it is that they're actually dealing with or what they've actually gone through. Many of us have experienced bad situations. I mean, being out here, this dating process, it has just been so ugly, like to the point that if I was not strong in my faith and I understood who I was and I understood what God has called me to do, I would probably give up on the dating process. And when I say give up on it, I just probably would be like one of these people who are talking about decentering men and, decentering women and all of that. But, I still feel that God is going to do exactly what he promised me that he would do, just because he's going to give me the desires of my heart. And so with that being said, y'all, like I said, I'm about an hour early and I want to get there early. So I'm gonna cut this video, let you know that never judge a book by its cover. Like, take the time to open it up and read it. And then when you do, you might find that just what you're looking for is right there. And also you may find that you might be the safe space for someone that couldn't find that safe space with anyone else. So if you guys don't do anything else, make it a great day and do that on purpose. All right. Have an awesome day, y'all. And I'll be back tomorrow. Bye.